Hello and greetings. My name is Shwa, and I am the host and founder of a podcast called Light Up with Shwa. It's a weekly podcast on conscious living and parenting. I have a very special guest with me, David. How would you describe parenting, like in general? What do you think when you hear this word, parenting?
So parenting is an interesting word because it can mean the biological parenting, right? Which makes a lot of sense. I think that's probably the most traditional sense of it. But people can be parents or a parent-like mentor role throughout our lives. Can be a chosen parent versus one that's biological. So, I mean, listening is very important, actually. In general, right? So, I mean, definitely as a parent, you need to understand what the younger person is up to in the world and what their interests are and what their questions and concerns are. And it really listening is really just a great spot to start. So I'll switch over to the business context, which is where I spend most of my life. I talk about in listening from a business context that it's really the best thing to do to start. So whether you're developing a new relationship with potentially a client or at a networking event, it's really great if you have a chance to ask the other person first to tell you a bit about them, because you have so much more information than from which you can then respond and begin to develop what you're trying to develop in a relationship. True with kids too, right? Again, if you're always just telling a child what to do and not listening to why they want to do what they want to do or what they're up to in the world, it's very much more limiting. And I think it creates much more challenge if we don't listen. So I think from a societal perspective, sometimes it's very, very difficult to listen. Maybe not to get too political, at least not at this point in the conversation. But I think it's this massive challenge in the United States and globally in other places as well, that we have this huge political division, right? And it's very, very difficult, I think, for me and for many people to listen to what people who have a different point of view have to say. Like, I want to be respectful and listen, but sometimes it just strikes as so different than my view. But if we don't listen, then we don't create the potential to come together. And really, it does take compromise to come together, or at least it takes an understanding of the other person's perspective to be able to make a difference. Because just fighting doesn't produce a good end result.
How did you become a good listener? Were you always like this, or did you learn these skills from your parents?
So I think listening, I don't know if it was a natural trait for me. I'd say it probably wasn't. I do like to talk, maybe too much though, right? But I think I really began to realize the value of listening, in part because of the business context. And so I had a sales coach that once told me, I used to build these beautiful presentations before I'd go in to meet with a client. I would get to know the client the best I could from everything that was available on the web and everywhere else. And the sales coach said, don't bring a presentation, just go in and listen. And I'm like, really? That's so interesting. Just go in and listen. And she's like, yes, drop the presentation. So the next meeting I had, it was just supposed to be like a coffee meeting, and then it turned into this formal meeting. I didn't bring a presentation, and I listened to what they needed. And sure enough, I was able to fulfill what they wanted. But had I done a presentation, it would have been totally different. We ended up selling a $250,000 project. And it was one of the easiest sales I've done to a large company. And it just took a couple of steps from there because I listened to what they wanted. And then I'm like, yes, we can do each of those things you want. And so her advice is always, don't sell what you want to sell. Sell what the buyer is looking for, right? And so you have to listen to do that. And I think it just makes a lot of sense in almost every context, like you were saying, to listen to what the other folks have to say. So I don't know that it's a natural gift for everyone. I will share a quote that's relevant to this, which is, if you listen 80% of the time and speak 20% or less, people consider you a good conversationalist. And I love that. It makes so much sense. So really, if you're listening more than you're talking, people consider you good at conversation, right? So I don't think I always knew that, but as I begin to engage with people more from a listening, and I really do try to have the other person talk more first. This is a little unique environment because you're
No,
interviewing
no,
me.
this is there. I don't want you to be quiet here. This is your time to talk. I know you're a good listener.
Yeah. But it really does. It makes a difference because you can then understand from what to communicate, right? Whereas if you don't have that context, you can be in a totally different space and it just doesn't necessarily make a difference.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to a bit of interfaith, intercultural. Is that okay? Are you an interfaith kind of person? Well, you're talking to me. And you're doing business all over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is actually, you asked about parenting earlier and what was my experience like as a child.
Oh,
parent.
yes.
So
Sure.
it ties into the religious conversation very much, or spiritual conversation. So I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I'll just put that out there up front. So we're very open and accepting of all religions and no religions. So I personally view myself as atheist, and that's okay in Unitarian Universalism.
Okay.
It's very open. So where did I develop my belief system from on that? Well, my parents, before I was born, lived in Sri Lanka and then India. And they went as medical missionaries, but I think it was more medical than the missionary side, right? It was really helping people. And I think that really built a big foundation for who I am in the world, to respect, all people and to kind of have more of a flat world view. So we had people that lived in our house growing up that were from Sri Lanka. We had a family, and it was really a good experience. They became my sisters, and kind of like my stepmom also, for the mom and of the four of them. And so I think that opened up from both. It's really a worldview in addition to the religious spiritual, but I recognize that people have different views, and I think it's really what the person is about. I personally believe in a more open view than a more dogmatic view of things. And I think that's, again, it's like the listening conversation. So listening to what people are up to.
Yep.
And fundamental principles of Unitarianism are respect for, the person, respect for the different views, respect for the environment and the world and, the whatnot. I can't do the 7 principles right now. We have 7 core principles.
I know.
but it's all good.
Okay.
So I hope so. So maybe something that came to mind as you were speaking about that as well is, we make up these constructs as humans. So geography, right? Hey, I'm from America. Someone else is from Canada or whatever, right?
Yes.
But those lines are just created. There is no Canada and America. It's just a line, right? We're all people.
Yep.
So one of my pet peeves maybe gets a little controversial, but like just buy local, right? Well, I do think sometimes it makes sense to buy local, but you know what? If there's someone starving in Australia or someone starving in Ethiopia, it's still a person, right? These are all people. And actually, I have a great story for this.
Yes, please go ahead.
I've told this story many times, and what amazed me is how it connects with people all over the world. So I went to China with my father a number of years ago. It was an awesome trip. My dad always wanted to go to China. It was just really a real gift. And one night I went out to a bar just on my own, just to meet people. My dad wanted to go to sleep. And I ended up meeting the bartender and had this amazing conversation with him. And one of the things that he told me was that when he was growing up, he was told he had to eat everything on his plate because there were people starving in America.
That's interesting.
Isn't that funny, right?
Yeah.
Because I tell the story, everyone, like parents, moms, whomever, pick somewhere in the world and say, well, there's someone starving somewhere else. I was told people were starving in China growing up.
Yep.
But, there are people starving in China, but there are absolutely people starving in America.
Too, yes, exactly.
Most recently lived in Camden, near Camden, New Jersey. There are people starving in Camden.
Yes.
So we don't have to pick some other part of the world, but we are all people at the core. And so if someone's starving, no matter where they are, down the road from us or across the globe from us, they're still people.
Yep.
So there's another little saying that I think is nice. So if 2 people think exactly alike, You don't need one of them.
That's a good one.
But it's so true, though, right? I
Yes,
mean, through the
that's true.
friction, even though it's unpleasant at times, it
Yes.
gets us to a better decision point.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
Hopefully, right? Of course, hopefully, right?
What do you like? Something that you like about yourself and something that you would like to change about yourself.
Okay. Something that I like about myself.
Hmm.
So I think I get over things very, very easily. Like if someone's upset with me, I can have, I can feel, however one would feel in that moment, disappointed, sad, etc. But as soon as they're like, okay, I'm like, fine. Like I don't hold on to stuff at all.
Oh,
Like it's
wonderful.
just like gone, it's
That's a very good habit. Otherwise, you would be like, with all the work you do and people you meet, if you took everybody seriously.
yeah, you kind of have to let people do what they do, and and I do think the majority of people are really good people.
Mhm.
I think we're fortunate as a society. There are always a few, that are not really good people, but I think by and large, people are good at the core. Even people where we might not share the political view, they're actually good people. They just have a different worldview. I'll give you a story where people might say, no, that person's bad. So I mentioned I was a foster parent to two
Yes.
boys. So within the first 24 hours, what the boys said about their mother was she was, drug addicted, wasn't able to take care of them. She would spend their money so they had no food to eat on drugs, right? Gee, this is a bad person, right? I don't feel that. I feel really a lot of empathy for her. And I think the kids did too. They said they loved her, right? They recognized what they said is no one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be a drug addict, right? People don't wake up and say, hey, I want to do bad, right? What happened was when you really go all the way back in her story is I think she had attention deficit, was not a great student in school, right? And she learned to not like school because she had these challenges. And so then she hung out with some people that maybe weren't the best influence. She had some other life traumas and things. So if you look back, I mean, without making it a really long story, then she ended up having back pain and had a prescription drug, prescribed to her. And eventually she became addicted. She's not a bad person. Then she was doing what she had to do to survive in the world. And for her, she needed the drugs. It wasn't like she was trying to be mean to the kids. She definitely loved her boys. And her boys loved her, despite her potential flaws, what you'd call flaws, right?
So does that mean that there is nobody who is bad, or it's the situation makes them bad?
I'm going to try not to get there are people who are not good in the world.
Okay.
I don't believe that every single person is
Okay.
good, but I think you also have to look a bit at people's life experiences. And if you really listen and get to know their experience, you'll understand how they ended up in the spot they're in. And they're trying to do the best they are. One other little quote, which I think is really powerful to me, I struggled with it initially when I heard it, is that everybody operates in their own self-interest all of the time. I struggled with that. I hated that when I first heard it. So let me illustrate, because I struggled and I had to ask the person who said it, and it was actually in a group setting to get clarification. So like, what about, let's say, a soldier who throws himself on a bomb to save his comrades? How is that possibly operating in his own self-interest or her self-interest, right? Well, the answer is because their view of themselves is as a good person. So by jumping on the bomb, they're perpetuating their view of self as a good person. So I think it's a really challenging concept, but I've looked at it a lot and it's stuck with me since I heard it. I think there's a bit of truth to that, so it doesn't mean that someone is bad because they're operating in their own self-interest. Part of my own view of the world is I want to help people. All three of the businesses relate on trying to help people succeed in what they're up to in the world. That doesn't make me a better person. I'm still self-interested, and that's who I want to be in the world, is helping people. Right?
But your self-interest happens to serve others, which kind of is a good thing.
But it's still self-serving, right? Because that's who I want to be in the world. I don't
So
know.
what's your viewpoint about, are they the owners of the children, or they are just a source to bring the children into this world?
I definitely don't feel they're an owner. I do think they are self-interested. I think that parents, so first, the first act of becoming a parent, right, is probably one of self-interest in some way, of pleasure, right, and
Mhm.
enjoyment.
Mhm.
Uh, it doesn't take a license to be a parent. There's one interesting thing about becoming a foster parent is we had training. I mean, a lot
Yeah,
of people don't have any training, and
that
boom, you're.
is true.
Uh, but then I think there's lots of things about parenting which is self-interested. It's perpetuating oneself into the future is parenting because you give life to another being,
Mm.
and so you want that life to continue on. I think many parents, and again, it can be very positive, but it's there in self-interest, is they want the child to take on their positive attributes, right? But that's a self-interested way of being. It's not that it's negative, right? But it is a self-interest. Is that I want my kids to have my belief system.
Hmm. And
You know.
one thing that you would like to change about yourself? Is there any, would you want to go there
Okay,
or?
so I talked about what I liked, right?
Okay.
Which was that I'm kind of able to get through things pretty
Oh,
quickly.
yes, that's what you said. Okay.
I will tell you one though that the one thing that I struggle with, which I think is really funny, and I hope it plays as funny on this, is I was reading my grandmother's journal the other night, 1940 to 1970. It dates me. I was born in that time period, and so my brother and I have had some friction over the years, right? It's kind of sibling friction, but it happens over the years, right? And so as I was reading my grandmother's journal, I went to the day I was born. It gave all the stats. Her journal was very
Oh,
fact
wow.
based. I was born at 7 p.m., blah, blah, blah. Okay. But then on the next day, I have an older brother, the one that I had friction with, and it said, Lee does not want a baby brother. Or does not want a brother. It said Lee does not want a brother.
Hmm.
I thought that was so funny. It's
Oh,
like, here the day after I was born, we already have friction, one day into it. So I didn't start that argument, I swear.
hmm,
So I was just born.
yeah,
Anyway, I
yeah,
thought it was fun. But
yeah. That's interesting. Can you define what is a healthy, fulfilling life?
so I can define it for me. For
Hmm.
me, when I'm trying to make a difference in the world, I feel very fulfilled. I feel satisfied. I think love is a feeling of satisfaction, a wonderful feeling. My mother is 89 years old, has dementia, and she really can no longer fully care for herself at this point. She needs a lot of supports to do it. And I was fortunate. She spent about 5 weeks with us this summer. And it was just, I could really, really appreciate her just being. And it's very satisfying knowing that I'm doing the best I can. Not that I don't ever make a mistake, but I'm doing the best I can to try to take care of her. And then I get good feedback from other people who are like, wow, you're an amazing son, whatever, but makes me feel proud of that. It's satisfying. So
Mm.
that to me makes for a good life.
Good.
And I do feel happy when clients are happy. And I
Mm.
get a lot of positive feedback from clients. And it's very fulfilling, trying to make a difference for someone else. If I were doing it just for me, I really don't think it would feel fulfilling.
Yeah.
I think the idea that we fight one another to solve differences is a really horrible idea. Now, people definitely say I'm way out there on the skinny branches of a liberal, whatever. But the idea that we're spending however many trillions of dollars in the United States to build up the biggest military, right? Think about it this way. If we spent that same money on finding the best nonviolent way to resolve our differences, think of how many ideas we would have, right? $1 trillion. It could be a huge amount of creating think tanks to how do we not fight one another? Because the truth of the matter is, when we fight one another with guns, who wins? Is it the person that's right? It isn't the person that's right. It's the person with the bigger guns. It doesn't make them right. They could be the most wrong person in the world, but if they have a gun, they win. It's wrong. That's just wrong to me.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
What is the value of gratitude in your life?
So I'll hold this up. be thankful, right? Is what
Yeah,
it
oh,
says.
yeah, exactly. You have the mug. Okay, got it.
And I didn't pick that just for this. It's what I
Yes,
use.
I
It's what
know.
it is.
That's
So I
nice.
do think I think that it provides freedom for us, being grateful. I think if we're focused on what we're thankful for or grateful for, it's hard to kind of be upset in that same space. So it creates freedom for us as
Mm.
humans. And I just think that there is so much to be grateful for. I mean, I have everything I have is to be grateful for. Right now, I have this gorgeous view looking out on this lake. I'm
Yes. Oh,
very
yeah. Talk
grateful for
about
that.
that while you are talking about gratitude and thankfulness. Yeah.
Well, so I'm just in the process of moving from southern New Jersey. I think New Jersey has great things
Yes.
about it. I've been accused of liking everywhere I live or loving everywhere I live, the gratefulness, right?
Yep.
But there's something that's really peaceful about being on a lake. I
Hmm.
feel really in nature. I don't know if you can see behind me, this
Hmm.
cottage is all wood.
Yeah.
It
Very nice.
feels very much being part of nature.
Hmm.
And so much to be grateful for. I'm grateful for my parents. My father passed away a year ago, but
Mm.
93 years with him. I mean,
Mm. Very
a
nice.
huge amount of
Yeah.
gratitude and
Mm.
on just that. My mom, as I said, really thankful for the time I had with her this summer.
Excellent.
It was beautiful time, even though it was different
Hmm.
than, being able to have a conversation with her about something that might be on my mind or on her mind. But, just grateful.
Thank you. Um, I'm sure you have a lot of value for time. What is the value of time for you?
Well, it's one thing we can't replace, right? We can't just grow more of it.
Mhm.
And I think actually not getting enough sleep is not necessarily the way to go to try to get more time. I think it has its own downfall. But we're only here for a period of time.
Mhm.
And I think doing as much as we can during that period of time
Mhm.
is something that's a gift. So,
So, David, I was asking you, do you believe in afterlife or life after death?
so it would be kind of like saying, do you believe in the afterlife of a tree,
Hmm.
right? Or a squirrel?
Hmm.
So I do think that life is at the core, atoms, molecules. So eventually when we die, whether we're cremated or are in the ground whole, it all becomes part of the life sustaining force
Hmm.
of the universe. Now,
Hmm.
that isn't the energy side or the spiritual side.
Mhm.
But slight digression, there's a park near where I used to live in New Jersey
Hmm.
that was a military, manufacturing facility in the early 1900s, World War One. Over time, it was left alone. It has completely restored to a beautiful park without people tearing down the buildings. They just collapse. Nature takes over. So to me, nature is part of life's force. And just like a tree goes into the ground and becomes part, whether we're ashes, ashes also have, value in, the life. Energy, it's a different thing. There's interesting things that, you know, I mentioned my father passed away. My younger brother passed away 36 hours before my father. He was
Hmm.
severely and profoundly handicapped. And he was really a pure soul because he didn't have any other way of being. He was handicapped when he was a few weeks old, a few months old, and, was really never able to, make conscious decisions like you and
Hmm.
I might.
Hmm.
After he passed away, I went home the next day, and a peace lily had bloomed. I don't know if you know the story of a peace lily, but it's supposed to be like a pure soul. It
Hmm.
reflects that. I'd never seen this peace lily bloom before, and we had it for many years.
Hmm.
And here was this beautiful stem.
Oh,
And
wow.
but I don't believe in the afterworld. I think as people kind of generally think of it, but I do think we're all energy and we're all connected to one another
Hmm.
and to the universe at large. And so I do think there's the interdependent web of life. That's a Unitarian principle. I do think there is the interdependent web of life.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. What is the purpose of your life?
uh, so I think we'd like to assign maybe more meaning to the purpose of life. We're here while we're here. We're not. I do want to try to make a difference because it's what excites me and delights me, right? Making a difference for people. I don't know if it's like, my meaning, although I do think the universe operates in mysterious ways, right? It connects people. You and I connected. You could have connected to 100 other people that day. I probably did connect to 100 other people. Yeah. So, but, so things happen. And so I don't know, is there a purpose? Is there a reason for me doing what I'm doing? I don't know, I'm happy doing it.
Wonderful.
And I hope to make a difference.
Yep. I would want you to give a message of hope for the world and especially for the youth, and something a little bit about how can youth be more conscious entrepreneurs, I would say. But any message of hope for the world?
So first, I told the story of the park, which I think is a story of hope. Is that, as humans, we can do things that may destroy the earth at times. That's not hopeful, right? But I think nature is so powerful that it will, persist in some form or fashion. It may be bad for humankind, but it can make a difference. But I think we also each have the potential to make a difference. And that's really the story of hope, is that each and every one of us, we have to believe in our own ability to make a difference. Whether we all have an impact on people, whether we want to or not. And so why not make it for the better? Why not help other people to do the things that excite them and delight them? And why not support one another in doing it? And in doing so, I think we can make the world a better place for all. And it's just such a beautiful place. We're so gifted with this world. Let's take care of it the best we can.
Yes.
So it's an amazing time to start businesses. From the entrepreneur side, it can be very inexpensive. Platforms like WordPress are out there that you can get a plugin to do just about anything.
Yep.
I mentioned we launched entrepreneursnet.net in under a month. It's just technology can change a lot of things for the better. It can connect us as a world, right? So we get to know people all over. You could be calling from anywhere today and I could be anywhere. It doesn't really matter, right? So I think there's a lot of hopefulness in that in the world. And as you've, take that, which is good, and, move forward into the world with that.
How you use the technology, basically.
That's right.
Yeah, for the betterment of our humanity, I guess.
Hold fast to that, which is good, right?
Yes. All right. So my last question is, what lights you up?
Well, my businesses light me up. The love of my life, my husband, lights me up. Jeff, and I don't always see eye to eye, as we talked about, right? We joke about him being the lobster in my life sometimes. But at the same time, he makes me who I am, and he gives me a solid foundation. So he lights me up. And I really love making a difference for people. I would love to have an opportunity to really make a difference for 100,000 people. That would just be very fulfilling personally. And hopefully I'm helping 100,000 people to feel more fulfilled as well.
Thank you so much. David, I really appreciate you being here, taking out time, looking at your businesses. I was like, I don't know, is this guy going to give me any time? I have spent wonderful time conversing with you, and you have been gracious in your answers and all. So thank you really for being here.
A quick plug for my next meeting is with Net Impact. I don't know if you know Net Impact, but it's about social impact, positive social impact. And I'm supposed to be meeting with them right now. Talking about how we can make a difference in Detroit. They're having a big conference.
Excellent.
2 months from now. Net Impact.
Well, have a good meeting. Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.